Our society, our families, and our nation all depend on a vibrant and growing planet. This special edition of Profiles in STEM highlights careers across the environmental sciences. Scientists who daily create and support systems to revitalize our home, our Earth, our sustainable planet.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on the Person-to-Person Network. Welcome to Profiles in STEM. Our career series will feature an amazing STEM professional who is shaping lives and building the future. I'm your host, Katie Culbert, and joining me today, we have a very special guest, Dr. Cameron Jack. Dr. Jack is an assistant professor of honeybee toxicology in the entomology and nematology department of the University of Florida. His goal is to prepare students for the challenges associated with beekeeping and to train those entering the beekeeping workforce. Dr. Jack, welcome to our program. I know you've always been interested in bees. Let's go back in time. Can you tell us about a specific moment that inspired you to pursue a career in STEM and with bees?
Yeah, great question. So, I kind of came from it from two different perspectives. I mean, I had an interest in bees and honeybees and beekeeping, I guess, from a young age, just because my grandpa was a beekeeper. So I kind of had grown up around honeybees, somewhat, but it definitely wasn't something that I thought I would ever do or be involved with in any way. It's just kind of a weird thing my family did. But when I got into my undergraduate education and I actually started doing bat research, there was somebody in my department that was working with bats, and I thought it was so fun. That was like where I first learned to really enjoy and appreciate research. And also I knew that I liked doing research that was helpful and something that was outside. And kind of when it came time to choose a graduate career path, I looked for options kind of with both bat research, but I also thought, why don't I bring in honeybees into this equation, knowing that I like doing beekeeping, I like honeybees, they've got lots of problems. Why don't I see what I could get? And then I ended up doing a master's with honeybee research, and that's when it like a light bulb just kind of clicked. I was like, oh yeah, like this is where I need to be. So that's kind of how I came into this kind of, or at least stumbled onto this path of bee research.
Well, that's a really great story. And I'm glad that your research with bats helped you to pursue this career that you have now. So I know that you were a big help to me personally during my research on varroa mites in beekeeping. So can you share with us your latest bee research? I know you also have 2 papers that you would like to share with us.
Sure. So Varroa, for those who maybe have never heard of this before, so Varroa Destructor is a parasitic mite that is actually parasitizing honeybees. So you might not even know that even insects can have pests, right? So this mite is a parasite of honeybees, and it transfers a lot of viruses and vectors viruses, which makes these bees very sick. So from the beekeeper's perspective, I mean, this is probably the most serious issue facing honeybees worldwide. It's really hard to keep good, healthy, strong bees that make you honey that can be good for pollination or good for any other service if they're constantly struggling and weak because of this sickness due to the mites. So my primary research interest is on controlling Varroa and finding new ways to kill a mite. So my most recent research has been focused on looking for new chemicals or increasing the efficacy of chemical controls that are already available for beekeepers. One thing that's important to note is, I mean, for the plight of the beekeeper here is that a lot of the things, the maybe different chemical treatments beekeepers use to try to kill Varroa are not effective anymore because of mite resistance. And so it's really difficult to control these mites. So that's why some of the work that I've taken recently has focused on either one, looking for new compounds, new chemicals that might be toxic to the mite, but also not toxic to honeybees, because it's a very delicate balance to find something that is toxic to one thing but not the other. If you think about it, you're trying to kill an arthropod on an arthropod. They're very similar in physiology, and so finding something that is toxic to one but not to the other is difficult to do.
Yeah, I remember during my research, I had to make sure I had the right amount, so that was just enough to kill off the varroa mites, but not too much where it would have any harm to the honeybees. So I understand where you're coming from when it's like you have to find the right balance. And I
Yeah.
think your research that you're doing is really awesome. And hopefully you find a chemical with a good ratio that will hopefully get rid of the varroa mite problem for honeybees.
Yeah, well, Katie, it's interesting they say that. I mean, I think of the balance as kind of like almost like chemotherapy for fighting cancer in a human's body, right? What you're doing is you're introducing toxins into your own body, trying to kill the cells that are kind of the extra cells that are those cancer cells, but not kill the whole organism. In a way, that's kind of what we're doing with honeybees, is we're introducing a toxin that will hopefully not kill the whole honeybee organism. But there's likely never going, this is the sad reality I have to tell beekeepers all the time, is there's likely never going to be a silver bullet. There's not going to be one thing that's just going to kill those mites. It's most likely going to have to be a combination of multiple tactics that are used to be able to just keep the mites under control. Probably not, I think at this point, eradication, which means you're getting rid of them completely. That's just out of the question. It's just about keeping them below a damaging level.
Yeah, I like your like metaphor with cancer. I thought that's really an interesting way to look at it, because it is very similar in that way, that you have to be very careful. So, Dr. Jack, I'm curious, what is your favorite part about research?
Well, hands down, my favorite part with research is just the discovery, right? You're kind of like the explorers of the natural world. You're getting out to find and discover something that nobody else has ever known before. I mean, it's really cool. And so that is exciting to me. I mean, I realize that I'm a total geek, and like I can go home and tell my wife, like, hey, like I just figured out that if you put this type of a chemical onto this mite, it's going to do this to the sodium channels of that. Nobody else in the world will care about that, but I care about it, and it's interesting. And then, once you do the work and you show its importance, then part of my job as a scientist is to show why what I'm doing is important. But it's just that thrill of discovery of finding something new that nobody else knows. And I would say maybe in a close second to that, I am in a position where there are a lot of beekeepers that are really dependent upon this, and not just beekeepers. Beekeepers are the people that I'm directly talking to probably most often, that are most interested in the work that I'm doing. But kind of on a larger scale, I mean, the growers that depend on honeybees for pollination, and then directly even to everybody else that's just as a consumer of food. We all need to eat. And so, I can make those kind of large scale audience, or those arguments that say like, hey, you should all care about what I'm doing, because I'm trying to solve a problem that's going to, potentially make sure that there's food still coming to you. So I like, one of the things that I really like about my job is that I get to solve problems for people in a way that nobody else does that. You kind of have your niche of particular problems that you can solve and contribute and help kind of to the overall society, which is fun.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on like the discovery part is really interesting because it's like, wow, I finally found it.
Mhm.
And then I think it's like everyone has their own unique part in like society, and yours is your like research.
Yeah.
So in addition to your research, you are also a professor. How do you find the time to manage both? Could you provide us with a snapshot of what a typical day is like for you?
Sure. So um, it's very challenging to kind of have these three different foci of my position. You've got research, teaching, and extension. So the extension is like teaching the public. So that's what I was saying, like working with beekeepers, which is an important part of my position or of my role. But my primary, with the current position that I'm in right now, my primary role is actually instruction. So I'm teaching a lot of courses, and I'm constantly developing new courses related to beekeeping or honeybees or insect toxicology in some way. So it does become a difficult balancing act because I'm constantly, I need to be able to change gears, I guess, mentally throughout the day. So typically what I'll do is each morning I sit down at the computer. I will first start off by trying to focus on my classes. I need to make sure that I have everything ready, that if I'm giving or teaching something in person that day, then I need to have my lectures ready. I need to have my assignments ready. I need to be, I teach a lot of courses online. And so I need, even still, I need to make sure that I'm participating in anything that's going on. I need to grade any assignments. So my first priority of each day starts with teaching. And I also have different people that are working for me, different students and other lab technician. I have a field technician, somebody who helps me with my honeybee colonies. So I'm communicating with them every day as well. So unfortunately, I don't get to spend as much time anymore out in the field playing with honeybees like I love to do, but I'm coordinating a lot of effort. So I think that's once you kind of are in a professor role, your job almost becomes more of just a coordinator of all these different things. And of course, writing a lot of grants to try to pay all these different people. So you can keep the train moving. But so most of my days, as I said, I start with teaching and then I focus on everything else, which is going to probably be research. And as I said, I do a lot of extension, which means I'm working with the public. So that usually takes place in the evenings. So whenever there's often I'm speaking to different bee clubs throughout the state of Florida. Either right now during kind of COVID times, I mean, so much of it's been virtual, which has actually been a really nice thing for me because I can reach a lot of clubs all over the country. Or even all over the world. I've had some international, Zoom meetings where we've just been able to speak to beekeepers in Ireland or somewhere, in Australia. Just do it through Zoom, and it's been okay. So, but most of that is going to take place in the evening. So, some days get really busy and hectic as a professor. But the nice thing about this position is that I have a lot of flexibility over my time, and I get to kind of help set up my own schedule.
That's really nice to have like control over your schedule instead of having to stick very strict to what you do. And your job is very important because you're informing the public and your students about what's going on recently in your honeybee research and what they should be aware of.
Mm-hmm. But part of the difficult job of my position as well is that I kind of am expected to be an expert even on things that I'm not an expert. Beekeepers come to you with questions that they want an answer. And even though I might not be an expert in pollination ecology, for instance, they're coming to me as a professor and somebody who should know. And I probably the most common thing that comes out of my mouth is, I don't know, let me get back to you. So I have to go and learn, and I'm reading papers, and I'm trying to do my best to come back with a good answer for people. So, it's just, even though my time is spent, in certain ways of teaching, I think a lot of my time is spent just trying to figure out answers to questions.
Yeah, I think a lot of teachers and educators can agree with that. People and students are always curious, and they always have questions that you don't always have the answer to.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Jack, I was wondering, what made you decide to pursue academia and research versus the industry or business side of beekeeping?
Yeah, great question. So, for me, I had mentioned that I was interested in beekeeping because my grandpa was a beekeeper, but he was actually even what we would call a sideliner. So he was a high school principal, but used beekeeping to help supplement his income by managing, 150 to 200 colonies. So I think I had always kind of grown up with that side of mindset, that like beekeeping was something that I was going to do to supplement what I wanted to do. And during my undergraduate careers, when I knew that I liked biology, I knew that I liked teaching, and I knew then later on I learned that I liked research. And this seemed to be, going through academia seemed to be the way that I could really scratch all of those itches, that I could learn that I could do the research that I wanted while I'm still learning something, basic biology of different organisms. And then I get to share something that I'm really passionate about and excited about through beekeeping. So it really is the perfect path for me. I think, being in the beekeeping industry, would be really fun and interesting in so many ways, but I will admit it would be very, very difficult. It's a hard job, and I have nothing but the most respect for commercial beekeepers, people that are doing this day in and day out. It's a tough industry to be in. There's a lot of problems with honeybees, but those who do it well, and they can do very well for themselves. It's just, it's a difficult business and something that requires a lot of time and effort, probably more so than I would ever be able to give. So I'm very happy with where I'm at within academia, kind of the thrill of discovery.
Yeah, I agree with you. Beekeeping now is very hard. Because I have my own hives right now, and I'm worried that they're gonna die from varroa mites or swarm away, and then winter's coming up, so I have to winterize them. But I think it's really amazing that you found a job and career for you that hits all the points that you want to and things that interest you. I know a lot of people think that there isn't a job out there for them that hits everything that they like, but it is possible, and you're evidence of that.
It's definitely possible, and you just don't close yourself off to any of these of different opportunities or doors. I mean, certainly I did not grow up as a little kid thinking that I was going to be a honeybee toxicologist, right? Like I had no idea that was even a thing. And so you don't know the path exactly that you're going to take early on, which is fine. It's okay. The best advice I could give is to try everything. Try it and see what you like, and eventually you'll have a few of those aha moments of things, of maybe not even one job, but aspects of a job that you really like, that will start to connect you to other opportunities.
Yeah, that's really great advice. So I know another very important aspect of your job at the University of Florida is distance education, and you mentioned this earlier. So what are some of the benefits and challenges with distance learning, specifically with beekeeping instruction?
Sure. So there's beekeeping instruction. Probably when I first started this, and I had had talked to beekeepers and other professors even, and I told them I wanted to make this like an online beekeeping certificate program, or like some, beekeeping instruction program. People said, well, Cameron, you can't learn beekeeping online. And no doubt that's true. I have to concede, like, yes, you can't learn how to become a beekeeper online. But what I think that I am able to do, with the constraints of an online course, is you can still learn the biology online. You can still learn the basic beekeeping theory and practices online. So the challenge is that you're not getting the hands-on opportunity. I mean, truly, before you become a beekeeper, you need to know if you can get stung a few times and be okay with it. There's plenty of people that like buy all this equipment, they're like ready to be a beekeeper, and then they get stung a couple times. They're like, that hurt. This is not for me, right? And then, so getting stung is kind of part of the curriculum. Like you have to do that. And you have to have those kind of hard days and those experiences to know whether or not you do want to be a beekeeper. But so an online course, I can't necessarily offer that, but what I can offer is, the big picture. And then with some of my courses, I kind of start off very broad, and then I get in future courses, I get into like the nitty gritty of all the ins and outs that I think are really important, that actually many beekeepers are missing that because they're not trained by with the honeybee research focus. They're trained in just a practical beekeeping, like here's what you do in this situation, which is, you need both parts is what I'm saying. So as part of my online curriculum, I setting up to have people do internships so they can go work for beekeepers, so they can get the hands-on experience that they would need to be able to actually go into the industry.
Yeah, I think that like your program is really awesome, and like how you think about the big picture first and then get smaller and smaller is really good, because being a beekeeper, you need to know everything. Like you said, it's good to have both parts. You kind of need it. And I think it's awesome that you also have internships set up so people can get the hands-on experience without just going out there on their own and being like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of, when you're starting off, you definitely need to have somebody as kind of a mentor for you, or else you're just going to have so many questions on the fly that you're just going to need somebody else there. And it's difficult to do that when you're trying to figure it out all by yourself.
Yeah, and I'm also sure with COVID, it was easier to reach out to more people because everyone's more in this virtual mindset. And like you mentioned earlier, you got to even go internationally, which is really cool. And so on top of all that, I know you also serve as an academic advisor. What responsibilities are associated with that position?
Well, so I guess there's different kinds of advisors. There's some that are going to like have graduate students that are like my graduate students that work for me, that are in the lab. But as part of my distance ed responsibilities for my department, I'm an advisor for about 70 plus students. So there's a lot of students that are learning entomology or getting an online graduate degree in entomology, and that's challenging the program is growing so much, which is exciting, but it kind of presents new challenges of being able to manage my time in a way that I can still be a meaningful resource for all these students that are learning and their own, that they all have their own interests. They all have their own personal challenges and issues. And they're all potentially going into different degrees or different, focus within their degrees. And so it is challenging. Part of it's just learning all the different rules that are within the University of Florida Graduate School and all the departmental kind of rules. But a lot of it is just trying probably the most important thing that I can do is to just make time for students, to meet them individually. I mean, even it's an online program, so I've hardly met anybody in person, but setting up times to do kind of these Zoom meetings where I can kind of make sure that what they're planning is going to help them meet their goals and help get them to where they want to go after they graduate. So probably the most important part about being a good advisor is making time.
Yeah, about you talking about making time. It seems like with everything that you do, you have no like free time.
There is no time. That's the hard part. And I don't think I'm unique in this. There's everybody's busy. This is something I've learned. Like, no matter what your job is, like, people are busy. I get it. I feel like in the university setting, it's also dialed up a notch. Like, it's pretty, I didn't know how busy I could possibly be until you're there. And then, also there's a work-life balance. There's other things that I'll want to do outside of work. I have a family, I have kids. There's just so many things going on. It just makes it's really important to prioritize your time well and to be very organized, or else it can easily just become extremely chaotic. So learning to say no is also important too. I've had to kind of go through that, because we're all bound. We can't do everything. So making time is important, but also saying no is important, so you have time to do the most important things.
Yeah, time is like humanity's greatest struggle. There's never enough of it.
Never enough.
So, Dr. Jack, we've explored a lot of areas today, and you certainly have a very busy life, but it's very interesting. Is there something else you would like to share with our audience as they explore STEM and careers in STEM?
Probably, I kind of had mentioned a little bit already that what I thought was the most important thing was to try everything. And if I could add to that, I would say what I would feel would be really important is to give yourself opportunities to just explore and to think and to find what you love. I mean, like I said, when I was probably in high school, I had such a limited view of what science actually was. I mean, I just I assumed that because I knew that I liked biology, I assumed that I would go into some kind of like medical field, because I thought that's all there really was. Like, if you do science, you go into medicine. But it wasn't until I had just explored different things. Like I said, I did bat research. I did that because it sounded interesting, and there happened to be a good professor that I had that I thought, wow, this guy is doing some really cool work. I would love to just work with him. So I went up after class and I just said, hey, you mentioned you did bat research. Can I help you with that? And that's how it started. Like, that's like the first time I think that I ever experienced, like, hey, science can be something other than just medicine, right? I mean, that's when those kind of little light bulb moments happen, is just when you give yourself an opportunity to try something different. And I'm a very introverted person. I don't like to talk to a lot of people, and not because I like people. I just don't like it. It drains me, like, emotionally, to like go and be interacting with people all the time. So but you kind of have to learn to push through that. I think no matter what your job or what you want to do in the future, you're going to have to communicate and interact with people. So give yourself the opportunity and push yourself to do something different, and don't close off any of those doors, because there's so many opportunities in STEM. You just have to go explore and see what they are.
Yeah, I agree with you. Always explore and always try something new. One of the greatest things that I learned is, like, when you ask someone for something, the worst thing that they're going to say is no, so might as well just try.
Yeah.
So I would like to thank my guest, Dr. Cameron Jack. Dr. Jack, it was really great speaking with you today. Thank you for spending time with us.
Well, thank you, Katie. It's been my pleasure.
Mine too. And to our viewers, please join us again for another exciting episode and another remarkable STEM professional. You have been listening to Profiles in STEM. Thank you. Katie Culbert signing off.